all-time independent Sun Devils with head coach Bobby Hurley.
In what could be one of the biggest blows to ASU's postseason wishes and dreams, Colorado comes to town tonight and defeats ASU 67-59. Welcome to the Devil's Digest postgame analysis. My name is Nick Borgia. That's Hod Urbino, our publisher. And Hod, so much of this game was back and forth, until that final 5 minutes where Colorado was able to break away on a 17-3 scoring run to ultimately get it done.
Yeah, absolutely right, Nick. A 17-3 run in the last 5 minutes and 37 seconds of the game. And don't forget that also to end the first half, Colorado went on an 8-0 run to tie the game at 32. A buzzer beater three-pointer by Colorado's KJ Simpson was absolutely tremendous tonight. Really, I thought was sending ASU so pissed off into the locker room that they would really come out like gangbusters in the second half. And maybe it happened to some extent. I just felt like ASU all night long just been letting Colorado hang around. And maybe Colorado is not one of the juggernauts of the Pac-12, but they're definitely good enough that if you're going to give them one chance after another, that eventually you are going to falter. So definitely an embarrassing performance by Arizona State, and I think even more embarrassing that you had some Sun Devil greats here in attendance: James Harden, Eddie House, Zylan Cheatham, Rob Edwards, and all of them had to witness one of the worst losses, definitely in conference play at home by the Sun Devils. And you just can't really help but shake your head when you see a team like Colorado that has nothing to play for compared to Arizona State. And tonight it almost seemed like the roles were reversed, because Arizona State, like you said, was so much on the line, trying to be on the right side of the bubble for the NCAA tournament, trying to finish in the top 4 in the Pac-12. Their chances took a severe blow. Some might even say that this may be the last nail in the coffin as far as any postseason hopes of finishing in the top 4 in the conference.
So the offense started at a good pace. They were scoring, but then, as I said, as it got to that second half, to the crunch time of that second half, they were just nowhere to be found. It was only Desmond Cambridge Jr. and DJ Horn tonight that even hit double-digit points. Just an offensive performance that would not be enough to topple Colorado. Yeah, and
ASU, I think, started the game hitting, I believe, 5 out of 7 from three-point range. And this was really almost, I think, a curse rather than more of the blessing, because I felt that Arizona State really, for most of the game, was very, very impatient. Even when they were running fast breaks, having odd-man advantages, they would still pull up for a 3 instead of working the ball inside. So it really was just such a disappointing performance by Arizona State. And I'm sure Colorado, I'm sure that frustrated them, but they really were not aggressive at all. ASU only had 5 free-throw attempts the entire game. And I think this was probably one of the better officiating games that Arizona State has been a part of, so you really can't blame that on the refs. But I just felt that they just settled for too many jumpers, too many three-point attempts. And granted, Warren Washington coming back after a 2-game hiatus due to COVID, only played 23 minutes, had no points in the first half, actually scored the first 4 points in the second half, and you thought that this really could get the ASU offense going. But I just felt that they didn't really try to find Warren Washington too much. Again, just reverting to one three-point shot attempt after another. I believe there were 3 out of 13 in the second half, and even though Colorado was only, I think, 6 out of 11 and had the same amount of field goals, but ultimately I just felt like their offense just ran much more smoother. They had 8 assists on 11 field goals. I think ASU had maybe 5 or 6 assists on 11 field goals. Everything that ASU was able to achieve on offense, this came at a really, really laborious pace, if that makes sense. And it just seems like that Colorado, again, just hanging around, just making sure that margin was at arm's length. And like you said earlier, just an absolute ridiculous run if you're an ASU fan. 17-3 in the last 5 minutes and 37 seconds. I'm not saying you should accept that if U of A or one of the LA schools is making that run, but a team like Colorado to make that run on your home floor after you came back from a successful road trip in the Bay Area where you swept Stanford and Cal, and you really showed a lot of grit, a lot of perseverance, and to come at home over here and not show any of those traits at all, disappointing and more importantly, head-scratching, again, with so much on the line for the Sun Devils.
And defensively, not ASU's best performance, but they did cause Colorado to have 15 turnovers. Arizona State only had 8. But when your offense isn't doing its job on the other end of the court, it really doesn't matter much at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record, but we just said all season long, Nick, this defense is going to fuel the offense for Arizona State. Arizona State is not a team that is comfortable getting into shootouts. Sure, they won some games in that fashion, but they're really few and far between if you just check box score by box score. And Arizona State was able to limit Colorado to 39% shooting in the second half. So that's a pretty decent number. But when we saw the ASU offense really take off, especially in the second half, that's when they're limiting teams in those last 20 minutes to 35%, 33%, sometimes even just around 30%, and that just really never happened for Arizona State. I mean, maybe the first 10 minutes or so, they played somewhat decent defense, even though it really was a seesaw game. I mean, I think at one point in the second half, just about midway through the game, we already saw 5 lead changes, so that's definitely not indicative of a good defense, even if your offense is struggling that much. But again, just going back to my earlier point, Colorado was just so much more patient with their assist to field goal ratio, and just making sure that whatever hole, whatever shortcoming this ASU defense displayed, they really exploited it quite well. I don't know if Colorado really came into this game as a scorching hot shooting three-point team on offense, but really I think in the second half those three-point shots were falling at very, very crucial times. And again, even though they didn't shoot at a great percentage, when your opponent, in this case ASU, is only shooting 33.3% from the floor in the second half, it was maybe somewhat of an easier task, I think, Colorado to come back with the win, again, with a monstrous 17-3 run in the last 5.5 minutes of the contest.
So next up for ASU is that circled stretch on the calendar of insane difficulty. You've got Utah at home, their final home game coming up on Saturday, but then after that, UCLA on the road, USC on the road, Arizona on the road. All 3 of those schools they're taking on the road. And it seems like after a loss like tonight, it's really hard to carry any momentum from that last series win in California last weekend into this game against Utah, and then so forth for the rest of those tough games.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can say that every series, every game on the road or at home is a must-win game, but this really was a homestand that ASU had to sweep because, like you said, U of A on the road next week, then the week after that on the road against the 2 LA schools. I'm not saying you mark all 3 contests as an L, but granted, ASU was going to be an underdog, maybe even a heavy underdog in most of those games. So they really had to do some damage in this homestand against Colorado, against Utah. Utah is one of those teams that ASU is really battling head-to-head to finish in the top 4. Last night, Oregon loses to Washington on the road. Gave ASU some hope that maybe, okay, they can get on a little of a run and maybe secure a place in the top 4. But now they got a team like Utah, who's playing U of A as we speak right now. But Utah is one of those teams like ASU, had a very promising start and really came crashing down to earth to some extent. But they're still right there battling ASU for that 4th spot, just like Oregon did. I know Oregon lost to Washington last night, but their schedule is much easier down the stretch compared to ASU. So ASU really had to build some equity, for lack of a better term, before they go into that murder's row of 3 road games against the 3 best teams in the Pac-12. And ASU is absolutely not able to do that with a loss to Colorado. And who knows what their mindset is going to be against Utah on Saturday. It is going to be senior night. Some people say it's something that can boost your performance. Some people say that players can get caught in the emotion and actually can hinder your performance. But if ASU right now, after coming from a very successful road trip in the Bay Area, really to show no momentum whatsoever and lay an absolute egg over here, especially second half against Colorado, is really disappointing. You can only wonder what the mindset of this team is right now. How did this show up on Saturday against Utah in their last home game of the year, and how did they show up again on just an absolute brutal stretch of 3 very difficult road games? It's really anybody's guess. But I feel personally, and I'm trying to be realistic, not pessimistic, that maybe any hope of finishing the top 4 in the Pac-12 probably vanished tonight with this loss. And as far as any chances of being in the right side of the bubble come Selection Sunday, I think those chances are all but gone, just with a very disappointing loss to Colorado tonight.
Well, thank you for your insight, Hode. So that final home game against Utah on Saturday tips off at 4 p.m. We will be here, so keep it locked in at DevilsDigest.com. Drop a follow on Twitter at DevilsDigest for all the best coverage surrounding this team. Until next time, I'm Nick Borgia. That's Hode Urbino. We thank you so much for tuning in.